lovely little doodle bugs, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all well. So in today's video I thought I'd film a slightly different video for this channel where I basically talk you through like the beginnings of my illustration process. Basically I've had an idea for an illustration stuck in my head for absolutely ages, and I think it's about time I actually kind of get to work on it and get it down on paper and start doing some little studies and paintings and start actually developing this illustration idea. And I thought it'd be quite a nice idea to basically bring you along on a journey and kind of talk through the processes that I'm using and what materials I'm using and stuff like that. So this is probably going to be quite a long video, a long chatty video, just going to become like a little series on this channel maybe. But for now, why don't you go grab yourself a nice cup of tea and a snack. You could even go grab like a project that you're working on, or if you want, go grab your own sketchbook and sketch along with me, and basically get comfy, relax, and let's see if I can make this illustration happen. Okay, so I think I'm just going to literally start by sketching out the idea that I've got in my head. It's going to be a really rough sketch, like it's probably just going to be a couple of like lines and shapes, but I just want to get the idea down in my head so I can see what it looks like and then see what kind of things I need to develop a bit further with it. So I'm just going to grab a pen. So I'm just going to use a black biro pen. I really love black biro pens because you get loads of different qualities of lines and stuff. So you can, if you press really lightly, you can get quite like wispy lines, and then if you press a bit harder, you can get more definitive, definite lines. So I'm going to use the black pen just to do a few concept like sketchy ideas and just like do a little thumbnail of what it is that I want to draw. So in my head I've got the idea of just like this little girl. So let's just start off with like a little circle for her head, and my idea is that she's going to be standing on a little pile of books. So I'm just going to draw a little square thing here to represent the pile of books, and she's going to basically be reaching up, and she's going to be on tippy toes because she wants to reach up, so she's probably going to be looking upwards. She might have something in her hand, I'm not quite sure yet, but she's going to be reaching up into the air, and then the reason she's reaching up into the air is because she wants to reach up to give a little giraffe something to eat. So let me just quickly really roughly sketch out the idea of a giraffe. So I've got the head there, they have funny little things on their heads, and then they have ears. I'm definitely going to have to pull up a proper reference photo of a giraffe for this video because that is ridiculous. And then obviously they'll have legs, and so let's draw a couple of little legs coming down, the neck. I think they sometimes have like this little bump thing here, rest of their body going down, and then some legs at the back. Obviously the giraffe will need to be on the same plane as the books. So I've got a little tail to stick on the end. Draw a bit more of an outline of this leg, and then some other leg in the background. I don't quite know where that leg will be at the moment, but what we'll do is we'll end up studying a few more giraffes as we go along. We might need to find out what giraffes like to eat because I think I quite like the idea of her giving the giraffe something to eat and then having a bit nice long hair, possibly in a dress, but I think I'm going to develop her character a little bit anyway. I've kind of drawn her quite at like a tilty angle because I think when people are on tiptoes they tend to like lean forwards and upwards a little bit more. So obviously I'm going to have to design this character a bit more and work out on the proportions a bit. But yeah, that is kind of like my original thumbnail idea. Just quickly sketch out a bit more details on the books, give it a bit of a curve. I quite like the idea of the books being slightly wonkily placed together, not too like neat. they're obviously quite giant books compared to her. But there's quite a good thing about illustrations is that obviously you can kind of play with reality a little bit with illustrations, which I quite like. I'm just giving the giraffe some knees because they do have quite knobbly knees. Might be a possibility that that this figure could be on this side maybe, or like the composition could probably change a little bit. It might depend on like what direction I end up drawing the giraffe in, as to, because it might end up being that I have the giraffe face more head on maybe. So let's just quickly draw a little shape for a giraffe face, and that actually she's kind of more to the back, so you'd see maybe the top of her fringe and the plaits, if maybe she's got plaits or something, and should still be reaching up, but you'd see a more of a back view like so. But that's kind of what I'm going to explore a little bit in this video and kind of see how we get on with that. That is a really awful sketch. That's, never mind, it's only a little, just like a concept sketch for an idea. But yeah, it could be that she is more in a back view and the giraffe is more facing forward type of thing. I'm just going to get a bit of a black fine line pen. So this is a black micron graphic. I'm just going to find a size 04, which just tends to be the pen that I use more for doing outlines. So I'm just going to outline these legs a little bit more just so I can see what I'm doing with a few certain little bits. So at the moment she's got a bit of a fringe, a little bow in her hair maybe. Quite like the idea of her having bunches, so when I get around to designing a character, she might have bunches, she might have not. She might have not. Nice smile on her face, little eyeball. Obviously this character can completely change when it comes to designing her a bit more, but I just kind of want to draw in a few more definite lines. So let's draw on the tippy toes. So yeah, this is how I sort of imagined it in my head, but what I'm going to have to start doing in a minute is I'm going to pull up a few little reference photos for giraffes and stuff like that, just to work on a bit more and work out things like what their faces look like a bit more and just really kind of study them. So obviously this little giraffe's going to have a few more like little spots I need to work out and have a look a bit more at how their patterns look like, but I'm just going to draw some little spots on it for now. That is my really rough idea for this, like the concept for what I want this illustration to look like. But I'm just going to turn my little page over and I think I'm going to pull up some reference photos of some giraffes and see how I get on with studying a few giraffes. So let's turn this over. Okay, so I'm just going to start by sketching just a really quick outline of what I see. I'm not worried 100% too much about like proportions yet. I will do later on, but I just kind of getting a slight idea of where things are placed. This is more just so I know where it sits on the paper rather than anything else. So there's like a neck coming out down here, a bit like a triangle type shape for the face, but then with an extra bump on the end. Got the front leg coming out at a bit of an angle here. I'm just going to draw a line to represent where it is. I can add more detail to it in a minute. Another leg coming out a bit down here. This leg coming out that way. And then another leg there. A bit of a tail happening there. Ear. Very funny little, I don't know what they're called. I call them, I guess they're antler type things. I don't really know. Not clued up on giraffe anatomy, but I do find them cute. So, right. So we've got a really basic idea of this giraffe, but there's definitely things in the wrong places and wrong proportions and stuff like that, but that doesn't matter because I'm now going to go in and correct them a little bit. I'm actually going to start by getting this bit here right. So it's the front leg. Now when I look at it, this line here comes out a bit of an angle. It's not like, actually it's a bit more of a harsher angle than that, it's more this way. And then the neck, it's a bit lower than what I've drawn it, it's kind of there. And I can tell, because this little, it's like the negative space here I'm also looking at as well. Comes curving down a little bit more than what I've drawn it there. And actually, if I imagine like there's a little diagonal line from this point, it's kind of like, there's like a little diagonal line from this point to the head here, and that's kind of where the neck ends, and then the rest of the head begins. What I'm basically doing is I'm looking for clues on the picture as to where different points end. I've got my knee coming, that bit coming out there. Let me go grab a rubber because that line is really putting me off. So this bit here is coming down there, and then when I look, the bottom of the giraffe's face is kind of not quite horizontal but fairly horizontal to that bit. Side of the front bit of the face, or this bit here, is again, it's not completely vertically down but it's fairly close. So I'm just going to draw a vertical line for now, and then I can always come back in and alter that a little bit. Okay, what part? I'm a little bit flitty when I sketch out. I think it's because when I'm drawing, I tend to try and look for clues in other parts of the body as to like where the proportions are. So what I'll do is I'll look at something and I'll draw the other area and then come back to drawing the bit which I was looking at. For example, how big the head is compared to the leg and stuff like that. So I'll draw different areas and different parts to give me clues, because actually looking at this head is very, very similar size to this bit of the leg, which actually I'm going to bring the curvy bit here. Right, so when I look at this bit here, it's definitely going upwards to there, and there's like a little bumpy bit which then gives me this start of the body that's going downwards. Right, so we're definitely getting more of a giraffe silhouette type shape. Some little bumpy bits, the antlery, horny bits coming out of the head, and there's another one hidden in behind it. Gonna draw the rest of the hair, wasn't I? So got a little bit of skin in the back. This bit goes a bit bumpier, and we've got a really thin bit. Then it gets a little bit wider away from the neck. Kind of goes wider away from the neck at that point, and then it goes back into being a bit thinner towards the neck. And as it gets to this shoulder joint, or whatever you call it, it kind of follows it around and then gets thinned off at the bottom. Let's tackle this front leg, shall we? Down and in a little bit. Now then, I don't want it to go too far down, so actually if I look at the point of the nose, it's like there's like a diagonal line like there, and where that diagonal line ends is where the leg goes into the knee. So if I imagine a line from here to the hoof it is quite a sharp, steep, diagonally type line. Imagine a straight line downwards. There. Now, to give me a clue for where this leg here is, I'm going to look at the gap bit between them to kind of look at what the negative space looks like. So if I imagine that it's very triangular, so I'm just going to draw a straight line for a triangle there. Imagine a triangle going down. So it's that kind of shape gap there. So that knee there is in line with that bit. So it's not quite a perfect triangle, but there is the idea of a triangle of a negative shape there. Just draw this hoof. So again, I'm going to look at like this negative space here and work out what that is. Just imagine there's a straight edge here. A arc that goes from there round down to the foot, and then down here is a negative space. It's like there's like a little semicircle. So we're going to imagine that there's a circle, like an ovally shape here, because that would be where the giraffe's muscle is. And then we've got a line coming down. Imagine there's another oval here. I haven't drawn this bit yet, but I'm just going to get a clue about where the other leg starts by looking at this joint here. So then it's kind of like a little diagonal bit, and also so that's quite a diagonal bit from there. So that bit is quite possibly where that bit starts. So, and then I'm going to have a look at this negative shape and check that that is okay. Draw a little oval bit here for the top of the tail. For the tail, this is almost like there's a triangle like that. A couple of lines coming down, and that is what. God, the tails go down quite far. I didn't realise how far they went down. And then the tail comes a bit further down. Right, that is one giraffe outline. So I'm going to draw a few more giraffes, I think. And actually, when I look back at my illustration, so in my head the little girl would kind of be there, I guess, in comparison. Okay, so this giraffe, let's figure out just a basic shape. We've got the neck coming here, one back leg there type of thing, front leg here, there's another front leg here. Drawn that miles too far away, that one, but we'll sort that out when we correct it in a minute. So his head kind of about there, maybe higher, but again we'll do that once we start focusing in a little bit. We've got a knee, another knee, there's a leg, another knee, rest of the front leg, rest of the front leg, rest of the front leg, and rest of the front leg. But yeah, we now need to have a little bit more of a look at proportion. So I think I'm going to start actually with his head. So we've got a bit of a line coming down here. It's not quite vertical, but it's a bit more going down and outwards. Bit of a triangle diamondy shape for his mouth and his nose. But here we've got a little bit of a triangle coming out. We have this like little weird little knobbly bit there. These marks here are kind of his antennae things. Again, don't know if that's what they are, but I'm going to call them antennae. I will have to find out what they're called. Let's have a look at this next. So, kind of comes out from this bit and then goes on a bit of a curvy walk up here, and then the neck from this side comes out just near the point of it, just behind the point of his ear. So you've got the point of his ear there, and the neck comes there, and it's outwards. It's kind of like a diagonal bit going there. Now means we can then look at this bit here to give us a clue as to where the knee comes in. And that they all seem to be leading to this point here as to where the knee kind of starts. So if I do a curvy line kind of going in, there's a bit of exaggerating and then coming to the top there, and that sort of gives us where the top of the knee is. Every time I look at the ear I kind of change the shape of it. Right, and then we're going to have a look at this negative space here to work out how close together the two legs are. Tends to often be triangles for in between the legs and ovals for like leg muscles and stuff like that. Because the knees are very close, a lot closer together compared to the edges of the legs. Shape like that. From here there's kind of like a little hint of muscle. It's kind of like a triangle. We'll draw a little triangle shape first, but then it's boxed off a bit there. No. There is more of it. They've got a very knobbly knees, giraffes. Actually, keeping these lines in might help for when I end up drawing the girl in, because on this one the girl's head would be kind of there and the books would probably need to be like that. I'm distracted by drawing a girl now. Yeah, down, coming down here, going out a bit. So that's that giraffe. Let's try and get a bit of a better understanding of the giraffe's face and how it works and what's going on with it. Because at the moment I haven't really started thinking about eyes or anything. I've just literally got the outlines. So, rough outline just to make sure I can fit everything in. A nose going on. God, that's a really rough outline. Loads of little circles. We'll sort that out when we come to doing it in a bit more detail. Got a triangle for an ear. Another triangle for an ear. Neck. Right. Okay, so I've got a very, very loose, rough sketch. Well, let's start with the multitude of circles and actually see if we can turn it into the nose. The base of the lip there. Arc comes out, up. Okay, so let's draw these nostrils in. Obviously got little nostril slits inside. Nostril slits. I don't know what to call it. This bit here is going to give us a clue to where the neck comes out. So let's look at this negative space. Up that line coming outwards. And then I'd say that actually the base of this kind of forms a bit of a triangle with the neck. So naturally with any kind of face, there's sort of like a centre line. I know it's not always symmetrical, but like human faces, animal faces, there tends to be kind of like a line in the centre where then things tend to develop out from. So that gives us a clue to the centre of the face. Try and get a bit of an idea for the eye line. So I've already worked out that this bit comes to here. There's a line, a little tiny bit there, then the eye is about there, and then it's kind of, so both the eyes are kind of on that diagonal line. And we'll look at the negative space for this bit, so it's kind of like that. Then got like a little knobbly knob bit. These again are fairly in line with each other. Lovely jubbly. Right, where's the neck going? So I've definitely done the neck too thin on this, on the original sketch. So the neck comes out from behind the ear. It's not quite again horizontal. It is more kind of at an angle going downwards. It's kind of like a dip and a raise and then another. And then we've got a shoulder kind of about there. It's given me quite a good understanding of giraffe's face, but it's not quite what I need compositionally wise. So let's go on to drawing a similar giraffe where it's kind of still up close to the face, but perhaps at a slightly different angle, so maybe pointing down a little bit more. So if there's a girl there, the illustration is looking down more at her. I think the key thing is that actually the giraffe needs to be looking at the girl. So yeah, maybe it would work where the girl is at that angle, but yeah, not my favourite giraffe study. So let's do another one. We'll work out all of this stuff later on.
Okie dokie, this is Editing Future Meg here. Hello again, how are you? Hope you're enjoying this video full of little giraffe studies. So I thought I'd speed this part up a bit so we can get to my favourite part of the illustration process, which is painting and adding detail. But yeah, basically I continued filling my sketchbook page with some more little studies of giraffes, trying to draw them in slightly different angles and positions so that I could try and get a better understanding of the giraffe's build and anatomy and stuff like that. So I kept using the same processes and techniques that I did whilst drawing the first 3 giraffe studies, where I basically started mapping out big shapes and then carved out more specific shapes and lines as I got further along the drawing. It's almost like if you imagine it being like a piece of clay. With a piece of clay you start off with like a big block and then gradually carve away the shapes that you need. It's basically felt like I was doing something similar to that. I also carried on looking at the negative spaces around the giraffe and looking at how different parts of the body lined up with each other to refine the shape and basically to try and get the proportions right. So yeah, that's enough for me for now. Back to past me, where I'm going to start painting these lovely little giraffes.
Okay, so these are my little studies of little giraffes that I've done. Some of them probably more suitable for my my illustration concept than others. So if I look back at my little concept illustration, I think probably this one is alright. This one probably would work quite well. Maybe this one and this one. Possibly this one and then these three. They're all still quite useful, and I'm still going to use them to practice some looking at details and texture and colour and just kind of having a bit of a play around and experiment. So I think I'm probably going to start by painting these ones the usual way that I paint my little animal studies, and then I might play around with a few other materials later on. So if I get out my paints, I need to also get out some water as well. I need to actually, before I paint anything, I probably just need to slightly lighten the sketch up a little bit as well. Let me just grab a rubber. I don't want to lose too much of my sketching, but some of the lines probably won't come in particularly helpful when it comes to painting it. So yeah, let me just rub all out some of these lines. Get rid of all of the rubber dust. Is that what it's called? I call it a rubber dust anyway. Get rid of that. Right, so I've lightened up that sketch a little bit. This is a Daler-Rowney Aquafine watercolour paint set. I really like this paint because it's very bright, it's intense, it's a little bit more like gouache rather than watercolour, where the pigments are really intense on them, which is why I quite like using them, because it means that the painting ends up quite bright. And then I also have some Winsor & Newton gallery acrylic paint. I'll probably use a mixture of these to begin with, so I'm probably going to start with a little wash of colour. So I'm probably going to use my watercolour paints to do that, just because even though they are quite pigmented, watercolour paints tend to be a little bit less intense, so you'd still be able to see, if I do a light enough wash, you'll still be able to see the lines underneath. Now then, when I come to painting a background colour, I tend to try and either use a colour that will really contrast with the colours that are inside the giraffe, or a colour that tends to complement and warm it up. I think for this one I'm probably going to use a colour that will complement and warm it up. Grab I'm going to go for quite a nice wideish, this one. I like this brush. This is a good brush for doing little washes. Ready browny colour, so we'll start off with a bit of that. Let's mix in a bit more of this colour here. Lovely jubbly. Add a bit more water in. It's quite a nice ready browny colour. Yeah, so still wash very lightly over the drawing. I like to do little washes of colour over my drawings, just so that when it comes to painting them, it's kind of easier to then work on highlights and white areas as well as darker areas, and it kind of gives you a little mid-tone base to work on. Right, so my wash of colour is nicely done. One of my New Year's resolutions this year is to actually wash my paintbrushes out a bit more, because I get a little bit lazy about that, and then I wonder why my brushes get ruined. This is a fairly good size. It's a round brush. I actually don't know what size it is because I've got paint all over the handle. So I think I'm going to use this for working on a few areas. Now I'm going to start by looking at some light areas on this painting. Put a bit of white paint. I do tend to flit around between using acrylic and watercolour, because this bit here is really quite a light patch. So I'm going to mix some white with some yellow ochre. It's not quite a bright white. So let me block out this shape here. So it's, again, I kind of use shapes to begin with in the same way that I started off by drawing with shapes. Or this shoulder is quite a bit lighter, so let's put a bit of white paint on my brush. Quite a bit of a white patch going on here. This bit is quite a bit lighter. It's like this patch on the leg there. These parts in the leg. So there's quite a bit of... If you notice, when I quite painting loosely, I tend to hold my brush a bit further away. When I'm painting like a thinner line, I tend to hold my brush really close to the end of the brush. It just gives me a little bit more control over like the actual brush hairs. It's a really white patch there. On this leg there's quite a bit of light. So add a bit of this colour back into it. This bit here is quite a tish area. I can obviously play around with the colours a little bit in a minute. It's more about working out the light and the shade. By using quite like a bigger brush, it allows me kind of just to focus more on the light areas rather than the details. I tend to get hung up quite a bit on the details too early on. Right, so they're the fairly light areas of this giraffe. Watch out the brush. Let's work out the darker areas. With the darker areas, now I'm not going to use a straight black for mixing up the darker areas. I'm probably going to start off with a raw umber, possibly a little bit of blue, maybe even a little bit of red to give it a warmth. I may use some of these colours as well, but let's stick to my acrylics just for now. God, that's a pinker red than what I thought it was going to be. Permanent rose. It's a pretty colour. Let's go back in and start edging out some of these dark bits. Now, a lot of this face is quite in darkness. All the way down here. Now, this under the neck part, I'm going to add a bit of ochre back into this. Because this bit here is just quite dark patch there. Use some of this colour here. So again, when I'm painting, you'll notice I don't really always stick to one complete area, and that's usually because you can find that a colour that you've just used in one area is quite helpful for a colour in another. So I tend to use parts of the painting that I've already done to give me clues as to what other colours are in the painting. So again, a little bit of like information about the shading on this giraffe. I haven't really focused yet on any of the patterns, but that will come. That will happen. Really lighten that bit up, and there we go. Even though it's quite a dark area, I'm trying to make like so that there's a little bit more of a difference between this back leg and this leg here. I think that'll show up a lot more once I paint some of the pattern bits in. But I'm kind of making sure that I'm using like a bluier shade of brown for this bit, and then a reddier shade of brown for this leg, because it kind of helps with pushing little bits of it forward and other bits of it back. Let's carry on going back in with a nice ochre colour. What I quite like about acrylic paints is the ability to layer different colours up a little bit, so you can kind of have a harsh line and then layer paint over the top and it dulls down the line a little bit. I'm not too worried about using colours that aren't 100% in the image. Sometimes it's nice to have like a little bit of a pop of a colour that isn't actually really there. kind of gives a bit of life and character to your painting. So anyway, some people might disagree. Right, this bit here. Still using quite a big brush, which is good because it's really loosening up my brush strokes quite a lot. I really love this like little pinky reddy bit. In fact, I'm just going to swatch this colour up the top because it might help when I'm painting another one later on. Play around with a little bit of green for this leg here, bit of greeny brown. But it's weird because this leg is quite dark. This leg is also dark, but it's also got like, still got a little bit of light on it, so it's kind of an in-between colour. And then I think giraffes have like a whitish inside of their legs anyway, so on this picture it's coming out like a mixture of a greeny, ochre, browny colour. So it's not quite dark, but it's like it's because it would be like a creamy colour, but it isn't shaded. That's kind of got it. So let's put, you can always tone it down if it's too green, which it is. Let's put more white into it. And this bit, that's more like, yeah. So there's like a little hint of green, but not like an overpowering hint of green. So this weird greeny, ochre colour here is also kind of like on his belly and on like the inside of this leg here. So let's put that in. I can always dull down the green in a minute. Let me just put some hint of what is there. Ooh, that is too green. We'll sort that out in a minute. That doesn't matter, we can always correct it. Might be getting to the point where I need to change my brush and start focusing a bit more on details, but I still got the rest of this leg to do. And the legs, yeah, I still got the rest of the legs to do, but for like anything around the body, I think I probably need to start thinking about changing brush maybe. The rest of this back of the giraffe done. Okay, break down this pink a little bit, even though I like it. I seem to completely ignore the bottom of these legs. I'm going to change my brush though, because they are quite thin, the legs. Let's go for this one. Actually, I'm going to play around with the blues a little bit more in the legs. Bottom back leg has got quite a hint of blue in it. It's quite vibrant blue I've used there. I need to tone that down a little bit. I'm not using this brush anymore, it's irritating me. I'm going to use a different one. Two of my hardest questions in life: what to have for tea and what paintbrush to use for what. Right, let's tone down this blue a little bit. I quite like to keep a bit of it in, but not how it is completely at the moment. Tone it down by brushing some more colour over the top, perhaps spreading out a little bit, adding a bit more white into it. Oh yeah, like that, that's nice. Again, I'm sort of playing a little bit with colours that aren't 100% what I see. Like, not to the point where it's like outlandish, but sometimes I just like to add a little bit of a colour that isn't quite 100% realistic to the reference that I'm using. I'm going to do this front leg down here. I might use a bit of a purplier tone, so let's add a bit of a red and a blue together. Let's do this bit. Oh, actually, hold me bee, that's a good colour for down here. Blue is really helping push back some of the cut areas that are more in shadow. I'm going to add a bit more pink in. And I'm going to do this leg here. Definitely around this kneecap. Go in with a flat brush. Let's pull out some of this knee. Right, I've got quite a lot of information down using my bigger brushes, but there are a few little areas that I haven't worked on, like some of the legs bits and a bit up here. But I really want to now like really knuckle in and use a thinner brush and stuff like that. I'm going to start at my little face, and I'm going to start adding in a few more colours and kind of just working into things a bit better with a bit more control. My burnt sienna colour, I think. So let's try and work out a few of these little patterny details. So there's kind of like a line. I'm going to use like the lines in between the patterns to give me the shapes. It's like a line there, which comes about here. I think I need to darken down the yellow colour a little bit, but I'm just going to keep it quite bright for now, and then I can always darken it down a little bit later on. I think I need to work into the actual shapes a little bit with some different colours, because not all of the colour is the same, and at the moment it's quite like a blocked out colour. Patterns kind of seem to be less prominent as you get further down the leg. Yeah, so when you get down to this bottom part of this leg, there's not really that much going on. I wonder if that's the same for all giraffes or just this little fellow. So even when I'm like painting things, I'm still correcting shapes that I made earlier. I think sometimes as you put paint and colour into things, you can see the shading a lot easier, and then you can kind of then see more errors in the shapes. Okay, I'll come back to the hoop a little bit later on. I just want to start adding some patterns to this little area. I'm going to use quite a white colour this time rather than just a yellow for this bit. I still need to darken these up a bit. So let's start from this bit here. It's weird because I'm not like some people when they draw a giraffe, and there's nothing wrong with it, would probably draw like the shapes. For some reason I'm seeing the lines first, and then I'll probably fill in the colour in the shapes a bit later on. Line going up. Doesn't seem to be that much like actual logic to the shape of these shapes. I wonder if they're a bit like fingerprints, or human fingerprints, in that they're all different for every single giraffe. So go over that white line there because I don't know what's wrong. Cover that up, never happened. When I work into the shapes a bit more, I think what I need to do is kind of make some of the line qualities different, because at the moment they're all like the same thickness. Some bits of them are thin, some bits of them are thick, some parts don't actually have a line, but I'm kind of imagining an error. Does seem to be round about the knee where the pattern kind of stops, which I guess would probably make sense because then it would be more like grassiness. I'm just going to add a bit more yellow into this front leg. It's looking a little bit purple. Okay, I'm going to attempt to do the neck pattern lines now. I'm just going to stick to using white at the moment. I can always change the colours of the pattern lines. I just want to kind of map them out. I need to remember to draw the rest of the hair. In fact, I'm going to do that now. Okay, I need to remember to add a bit more shading and tone to that neck, but I don't want to get too distracted. To make them get quite a little bit thinner as they get to the neck by the look of it. Let's mix up a little bit of burnt sienna and ochre colour. Let's make this a bit wider. I've managed to kind of map out a lot of the colours and the shapes and stuff like that, but I really want to now work on a bit more shading, a bit more texture, colouring in perhaps some of these little patches a bit more and toning down some of the white parts a bit more. But what I think I'm probably going to do for that is use my water soluble Inktense pencils. Let me just find them. So here they are. These are my Inktense water soluble pencils by Doon. They've been very well used, so they're completely covered in paint, and actually to the point where they used to have like numbers and names on them, but I can't really see the numbers and names very well. But I just kind of go by instinct a little bit. So I'm going to put the paint tray to one side because I probably will still carry on using them a little bit. And then yeah, I'm going to use these. The great things about these pencils, if I just on the corner here, is that they react to water, so you can use them like a colouring pencil, but then you can also, if I get a brush, use them as, and actually they come out a lot like nicer when you do actually mix them with water, but you can mix them with water. I also find that they mix quite well with acrylic paints and chalk, especially white chalk, because it can help lighten it. But yeah, they act a bit like watercolour paints. So yeah, I'm going to work into this giraffe using some of them. So I'm going to kind of work on this area here, and I'm going to use this dinky little dark chocolate brown colour, and I want to, this bit here needs to be darkened a little bit. I want to work into these shapes. I'm going to kind of leave some of the colour that I've already laid down as well, but I want to kind of add some texture in. Break down some of these lines a bit, because some of the lines are quite chunky when actually they're a lot thinner. This bit here a little bit darker. I want to kind of keep some of the background red a little bit, so I'm not going to press too heavily. So yeah, the lighter I press, some of the colour from behind stays in, which is I quite like. Tone down some of these yellow lines because at the moment they're quite bright. I don't want to lose them completely, but I think these yellow lines becomes like standing out so much that it's taken away from the brighter lines that are there. So I'm gonna just tone them down by colouring over the top of them a little bit. So what I quite like about using a mixture of different media is that you can layer stuff. Neck a lot darker. Get my paintbrush. Just going to spread that colour out a bit more. So these white bits here definitely need to be toned down. So we're just going to get a kind of ochre, this one. Yeah, this kind of colour. I'm just going to tone these down a bit. Okay, so this bit here is a lot darker than what I originally painted it. So I'm going to use a paintbrush, draw into the really dark areas, and then I'm going to spread it out a bit with the paintbrush. So to spread out the colour a bit. This bit here is a lot darker, so let's use the colour that's still on the brush. Darken that down. Spread it down the rest of the leg. Just going to use a little bit of blue just to push some areas a bit back further into the shade. So I'm going to go in with quite a bright red and pull out some areas that I want to stand out a bit more. So this bit I want to make stand out a little bit more. What I'm doing now is looking at the shapes that are inside the white bits and kind of just adding a bit more colour and a bit more texture into them, because they're not just like one flat colour. There's like dark areas in the pattern and there's lighter areas in the pattern and stuff like that. Because down here at the moment it just kind of looks like a load of white lines when actually each patch is like a slightly different colour. I think I need to stop fiddling with this one for now, move on to a different one and then come back to this one in a minute. Can't stop fiddling with it. No, leave it. Right, okay.
Hello, so it's me again from the future. So I did originally talk over this part whilst I was filming it, but for some reason the audio didn't pick up very well, and me being a little bit like a technophobe can't work out how to fix it. So I thought I'd just kind of cut my losses and basically just record a voiceover part explaining what's going on instead. So yeah, basically here I decided to use my black fine line pen to look more closely like the fur detail and the texture and the patterns on the giraffes, because I sometimes think that using black pens make you focus more on what you're drawing, as the marks you make are a lot more like definite and they're harder to cover up any mistakes than say like when you use paint or something like that. So you have to be a lot more confident about the marks you're putting down on paper and like where you're placing things and the sizes and stuff like that. So I basically tried to use like a combination of different sized pen nibs and a combination of different mark making techniques such as cross hatching and dots, basically just to add detail to the giraffe. So I used bigger nibs and made sure like the marks that I was drawing were a lot more closer together for like darker areas, and then smaller nibs, and I made sure like the marks were a lot more spaced apart and that there's a bit more like background coming through for like the lighter areas. So yeah, I'm probably going to create another video in the future where I describe this process a bit more, so let me know in the comments if you'd like to see that. But for now, I think I'm going to leave this video here, because if not, we are going to be here for absolutely ages. But yeah, I've obviously got a few more giraffes to finish studying, and also the little girl character design, but I think I'll probably do that in a later video. So if you've got any questions for me about like this giraffe illustration, then please let me know. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this very long video. Let me know which giraffe was your favourite character down in the comment section below. Stay safe, take care, and I'll see you again soon with another video. Happy doodling!